My name is Claire Whitfield, and 3 years ago, my family threw me out of my own house on Thanksgiving night. Not my parents' house, mine. The house I bought. The house I paid the mortgage on. The house my sister was living in rent-free because I felt sorry for her. What I didn't know that night, standing in my own foyer with my coat in my hands, was that they hadn't just decided this over dinner. They'd been planning it for weeks. And somewhere in that plan was a piece of paper that almost changed everything. Let me back up. I'm 34 now. At 29, I sold a small software company I'd built with two friends from college. Enough to buy a 5-bedroom house outside Charlotte, North Carolina in cash. Enough to never worry about money again if I was smart about it. I let my family move in 18 months before that Thanksgiving. My mother, Diane, freshly divorced. My sister, Megan, between jobs again. My brother, Todd, getting back on his feet after his third failed business. I told myself family helps family. I didn't see what was coming. I didn't see that being generous had made me look weak. And weak people, in my family's math, don't get a vote. Here's what I only pieced together later. From screenshots Priya's cousin, who was friends with Brandon, eventually sent me. 6 weeks before that Thanksgiving, my family started a group chat. It was called, and I am not exaggerating, Home Team. I was not in it. In that chat, Megan posted paint swatches for a nursery. Not for a spare room. For what she called the baby's room, my office. The one with the good afternoon light. Where I actually worked on weekends. Todd had started telling his poker buddies to come by the house. Like it was already his address on file somewhere. My mother had begun quietly, boxing up things from my home office and moving them to the garage, making room. She told Aunt Carol, for when Claire finally understands this is bigger than just her. They weren't guessing I'd say no. They were preparing for it. And 10 days before Thanksgiving, Todd did something I didn't find out about until much later. He met with a man named Preston Ayers, who was not a real estate attorney. He was a friend of a friend who did some paralegal work and, for $200, drew up a document. It was titled, importantly, official sounding, a family residency, an equity agreement, stating that due to 18 months of continuous residence and financial contribution to the household, Diane, Todd, and Megan Whitfield held equitable claim to the property. It meant nothing legally. It was, in the truest sense, a piece of paper with fancy language on it. But they didn't know that. And worse, they were counting on me not knowing it either. Thanksgiving morning, I woke up early to start the turkey, genuinely excited. No idea what was coming. By noon, relatives I hadn't invited started arriving, and Carol, cousin Brandon, all avoiding my eyes. At 2 p.m., my mother sat me down at the kitchen table. Todd stood behind her. Megan stood by the door like she was guarding an exit. Claire, we need to talk about the house. Then Todd slid the document across the table. The family residency and equity agreement. He told me, with a straight face, that a lawyer had drawn it up, that it protected everyone's interests, that all I had to do was sign it and stay somewhere else for a while, so things could settle. I want you to sit with that for a second. They didn't just ask me to leave. They handed me a fake legal document and asked me to sign away claim to my own house. On a holiday, at my own kitchen table, surrounded by people I loved. I didn't sign it. I picked it up, read the first paragraph, and set it back down very carefully, because my hands were shaking and I didn't trust myself not to tear it in half. Who drew this up? I asked. Todd said a name I didn't recognize. My mother said, quickly, too quickly, it doesn't matter who, Claire. It matters that we're a family and families share. I looked at that piece of paper, at my mother's face, at Megan's crossed arms, and something in me went very still and very cold. I need some air, I said, and I walked out the front door of my own house, coat in my hands, into the cold. On Thanksgiving night, I didn't cry until I got to my car. 4 minutes maybe. Then I stopped, and I started thinking. I checked into a hotel and called Priya before I called anyone else. She showed up at my door 20 minutes later in her pajamas under her coat, holding 2 coffees, because that's who Priya is. I showed her a photo I'd taken of the document on my phone. She read it twice, then looked at me with an expression somewhere between fury and disbelief. Claire, this isn't even notarized. This isn't even real. This is a Word document with a fancy font. I know. Then why are your hands still shaking? And that's when she said the thing I still think about. 3 years later, more than almost anything else from that night. You don't need to become cruel, Claire. You just need to stop being convenient. I didn't fully understand it in that moment. I understood it completely by morning. Priya stayed with me until midnight, helping me think clearly instead of angrily. It was her idea to check my home security app cameras. I'd installed 18 months earlier and never disabled, logging everything to a cloud account under my name alone, that no one else in that house knew existed. What I watched changed the shape of the whole night. On the footage, hours after I'd left, I watched my mother telling Aunt Carol, "She'll come around." She folded easier than I thought. I watched Todd on the phone, laughing, saying, "Yeah, she just walked out. Didn't even fight for it." I watched Megan in my kitchen telling Brandon, "Honestly, this house should have been split between us anyway. She just has the money. That doesn't mean she gets to keep it all to herself." I saved every second of it. Then I called my real estate attorney, Marcus Webb. Texted him first since it was a holiday, and he called back within 20 minutes. I described the fake document. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, calmly, "Claire, listen to me carefully. That paper is worthless, it has no legal standing. But don't sign anything. Don't respond to it in writing. And don't destroy it either. Save every message, every text, every email from tonight. From this point forward, we're documenting everything. I want a clear record of exactly what was said to you and when." "Why does that matter if it's worthless?" "Because the document itself might be nothing," he said, "but how it was used, and what else it might connect to, is something I want to look at properly before we do anything else. Just don't throw it away." I called my locksmith, Gary. He could be there at 6 a.m. I didn't sleep much that night, but for the first time since 2 p.m. that afternoon, I wasn't afraid. I was ready at 5:30 the next morning. I was in my own driveway with Marcus and Gary. While my family slept inside the house they'd tried to convince me was no longer mine. Marcus's letter was short and unambiguous. The property was solely titled to me. The document presented the night before had no legal standing whatsoever, and everyone remaining past a stated hour would be treated as trespassing. Gary began rekeying the doors at 6. At 6:15, I walked in through the garage, using a code none of them had thought to change. My mother came downstairs first and froze. Todd followed, then Megan. I watched their faces move from confusion to something closer to fear as Marcus calmly explained that the agreement they'd handed me the day before was not a legal document, that the house was mine alone, and that they had 2 hours to gather their belongings. Todd tried the tough guy routine. "I'm not leaving. This is ridiculous, Claire." Over a piece of paper. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into his bag, pulled out a thin folder, and set it on the counter in front of Todd. "Then don't leave," he said. "That's your right. Until it isn't. But before you decide that, I'd suggest you read page 3. Todd hesitated, then opened it. I watched his face change as he read, the confidence draining out of it line by line. I didn't know what was on that page. Marcus hadn't told me yet either. "Where did you get this?" Todd asked quietly. "Public record," Marcus said. "It took one phone call this morning, Mr. Whitfield." I'd strongly recommend we finish this conversation calmly and privately, rather than in front of your family. That was the first I understood that Marcus had found something overnight, something beyond the fake agreement itself. He never spelled it out for me in that kitchen, and Todd never brought it up again. Not that day, not since. Whatever was on page 3, it was enough. Todd closed the folder, and the fight went out of him completely. "Fine," he said. "We're leaving." My mother tried the emotional route after everything we've been through as a family. I said only this: "You didn't ask me for help last night, Mom. You handed me a fake contract and told me to sign away my own home. I'm just finishing the conversation you started." By 10 a.m., the house was empty. Truly, completely empty. For the first time in 18 months. I did learn eventually what was on that page. Marcus told me a few days later, once things had settled. 10 days before Thanksgiving. Around the same time, Todd met with Preston Ayers about the fake agreement. He'd also gone to the county recorder's office and filed some kind of formal notice against the property, a real filing, sitting on public record, claiming he had a financial stake in the house based on his time living there. Marcus was careful to explain that a filing like that doesn't actually create ownership or change who holds title. It's more like a red flag on paper than an actual claim, but it's still not something you want attached to your name at a county office. And it's not something a simple conversation makes disappear on its own. Marcus didn't pursue it any further. He didn't need to. Todd understood exactly what he was looking at, and so, quietly, did I. Note for context, property recording procedures vary by county and state, and this scene is written as dramatized fiction rather than a precise legal walkthrough. Don't treat it as real-world legal guidance.